Hi!
Hi!
Welcome to another Film Critters Processes.
Processes! Here we are! Welcome to November, everybody. Welcome to Joe Biden's America. We are here to talk about something that's a little bit of a late Halloween present, a little bit of a late Halloween gift.
To be fair, it did not hit Netflix until Halloween Eve.
Yeah.
So we didn't even know about it until like a week ago.
Yeah. We're talking about His House, which is, you might have heard about it. It is a really buzzworthy. It's getting all the buzz on the blogs.
It's a horror film, but get this, it's also about modern day things that you might have seen on the news.
Yeah, no, it's
which is absolutely how Netflix is trying to sell it. But it's actually like way better than just like a buzzworthy horror film.
Yeah, I think that some of the Netflix like branding and their kind of advertising of it is a little bit doesn't really lend to how good this movie actually is, and makes it seem maybe not really corny. I don't necessarily want to say, but just it makes it seem a little bit more sanitized than it actually is.
Some of the promotional material I was seeing straight up just made it look like a Babadook movie, which is why I like originally was like, I don't know if I want to watch that. But then I think you and me had said that it was actually like a really good haunted house film, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, if it was Babadook, you wouldn't be telling me that.
Yeah. So, to kind of just, to springboard right into the conversation. What'd you think of the movie, Jay?
I liked it. I thought it was a very well constructed haunted house story. And I enjoy people realizing that, like, a way to, like, inject something fresh into these kinds of, like, genre pictures is to not necessarily overthink it, but to just literally be like, okay, what if it's not just another story of like an upper middle class family moves into a house in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
And then they're like, we got a great bargain on this place. I don't know why. And then it turns out it's like, oh, because a murder happened here, or because your wife has a death curse on her, because I'm glad to see that people are realizing you can make haunted house movies that aren't just like another variation of the Amityville Horror.
Yeah, what if a horror movie is not about a white family moving into a Frank Lloyd Wright house that is worth $20 million? What if it's just not about that? There's some of them, maybe at least one of them at some point can be about something that is not that. And thankfully,
what if there's a motivation for them to not leave the house that isn't just, well, I mean, I really like this house.
Yeah.
What if they like just can't move away from the house?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this movie, I really, really like this movie. This may be my favorite of 2020 so far.
Oh, that's high praise.
Yeah. Which, I'd have to think about it a little bit more, but I think that my big thing, especially in kind of relation to this movie, is that I think that horror is in kind of a place right now where it's the genre is kind of confronting itself and like what its own trappings are about, and it's just being a lot more upfront about being about trauma. And this movie is 100% about trauma. This is like the trauma horror film. That this movie represents a lot of horror films that I wanted to exist. For one, it's not about the things that I just said. It's not about like a white family living in a fucking huge house. Secondly, it is not. It's like a really good like things living in the walls type of horror, which is a specific thing that I've kind of been waiting for, and. Most importantly, it's kind of a meditation. It's like a trauma meditation that like goes really, really deep on its metaphors and explores them in so many different ways that are all just really interesting and beautiful. There's a lot to unpack about this movie because it's really extremely dense, actually.
and I think before we start to unpack it, I think a thing that I really liked about it to kind of like also put a hang on that. By the way, this is going to be pretty spoilery. I will say the film is worth watching. And there's a pretty big late film reveal. Or late film thing that happens that we're going to talk about that I think is worth experiencing completely blind. So if you were on the fence about this, I would say pause this, go watch it. It's like a quick 90-minute film. It flies right on by. But I think
it's a brisk movie.
Really works for this film as like a mediation on trauma is that it doesn't do the thing that like prestige horror air quotes does a lot that I kind of hate, which is it doesn't make everything the metaphor about trauma. So the film is like, these ghosts and the witch and whatnot are all like symbolic of these things, but also there is literally like a witch. there's literally ghosts. Like these things are like actually literally happening, and the logic of the film progresses as if these things are actually literally happening and isn't just like, oh, well, in this scene they have to react this way because it's a metaphor for them letting go of their trauma. And it does work like that, but it is also like it's progressing in this way because it's her realizing, oh, I need to kill this witch or my husband is gonna fucking die.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you kind of say that because there's a quote. I mean, like, we throw artistic intent out of the window on this podcast, and as everybody should, death of the author forever. I was doing like just a little bit of quick research before we sat down to record, and the director does have a quote about how, like, in his mind, and of course, I also kind of agree with Jay, where like I don't think that the director's intent necessarily, like, or rather, I think it's cool context, but I think it doesn't really change how I feel about the movie, where in the director's mind, the witch and like the paranormal stuff is like kind of not real, or it's like real in the sense that like it exists in this like weird liminal space between real and not real, where it's just like so effective as like a metaphor for trauma that it like it functionally has the same effects as like what trauma does and would do. For example, I also just really like how the house itself is kind of a metaphor for their mental state, where the male character is kind of like tearing apart the wallpaper and is like renovating and like breaking the drywall, and it's like completely fucking destroyed halfway through the movie. And like by the end of the movie, they've like patched it up, which is, you know, kind of hints toward healing and, you know, emotional healing and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I just think that stuff's really, I mean, it's interesting to think about but it also doesn't really affect like the content of the movie for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's and it can work on that like metaphorical like level as well. And like it's as in all horror films, there is always the question of like what is real and what isn't.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I like that it's not like we talked about Relic earlier this year too, where I was like, there's a lot of things in Relic where it's like, well, why does this scene play out this way? Why does the actor say this? And it's because the scary thing is actually a metaphor, and so the movie has to progress like that. Or the classic example of Babadook, where it's like Babadook is a metaphor for her depression. So at the end of the film, she keeps it in her basement and feeds it food, and it gets a little more easier to deal with every day, kind of like postpartum depression is. But it's like, okay, so she's keeping a literal ghoul in her basement, then, is what you're telling me. Like, this is like you were showing me that she's keeping a literal ghoul in her basement, and the metaphor kind of like falls apart there when you're trying to make it into like an actual thing. Whereas in his house, it being a question of whether or not it's not real doesn't change the like rules of how it plays out. Like, it still very much so plays out like as if it is just a ghost or a witch, even if it's like symbolically there being haunted by a witch.
Yeah, the stakes are high no matter what. Like this, you witness this like fraying relationship and these like mental health attacks and all of this stuff that like if it's real or if it's not real, it doesn't matter. But what's in your head absolutely does matter. Which is just a really good guiding ethos for a horror film to kind of have, I feel like. And that's something that that is a very specific aspect of horror movies that I've been waiting for a really long time.
It also works really well too then, because it's like them not being really believed about what's going on also works, because it's like, even as just like a symbolic thing of what's going on, it's like, okay, these are refugees. You know that they're probably going to have like some pretty severe PTSD, but it's like there's no recognition that like, hey, maybe he's overreacting and tearing holes in his walls, and maybe his wife is having this like weird, like supernatural, like paranoia belief about a witch, and wearing their bed sheets because they literally just escaped a war.
Yeah.
And then we're like immediately thrown into a completely new environment and basically told, well, assimilate. You're not allowed to get a job or have friends over.
Yeah. Yeah.
The two things that would make it most easy for you to actually develop a relationship to your new country that you're living in, working or having like friends over, you're not allowed to do.
Yeah, all of that stuff is so it's so effective, and it's so it creates just such a like crushing sort of environment for them. They're definitely like all of their interactions with like people in public are also just like really really isolating, and just really further the sort of like effects of their trauma. There's like the teens that kind of like fuck with the wife. I was really knocked on my ass by Matt Smith, the fucking Doctor Who guy, playing like a racist, like,
oh god, that's who he was. I was trying to figure out why I recognized him.
Yeah, he was like one of the Doctor Who's, I think, or maybe he wasn't. I don't fucking know. I'm not on Tumblr like that, but yeah, him being in this movie is really fantastic. As kind of like a shithead too.
He works really well as this like nominally racist as well, but there's also like all of the caseworkers and all of the people they interact with function on the same rules as the witch, the Night Witch, which is that it's like, it doesn't matter if you appeal to them or not. They just have rules that are completely like detached from any humanity of the people involved in this situation. And it's like, either you follow the rules and you get what we say you're going to get, or you don't and you are punished for it.
Yeah.
Because the Night Witch basically gives them the offer of like, kill your husband and I'll bring your daughter back and stop haunting you. And then the bureaucracy is, there's like that line early on where it's like, it doesn't matter if you impress me. It just matters if you like, if you hit our checkpoints on our reports. Like, all of these people are deferring to some higher power and not really taking like responsibility for the fact that like they themselves are the ones that like are the conduits for this power to be expressed on these people. Much like how the witch isn't really like, the witch isn't like, oh, I'll cut you a break. It's just like, sorry, God put a curse on you. This is what you got to do, or the curse gets you.
Yeah, a really strong feeling of just like you have no choice. You have to kind of an adapt or die kind of thing coming from both directions, which is really rough, really difficult.
And represents like the internal tensions of both characters, like so effectively, just like how they both respond to those two pressures, like Bull leaning more towards trying to cater to the like assimilationist like values in a kind of like clumsy way of just like literally just like imitating their mannerisms, like being like, oh, well, we just need to act like them. Mm-hmm. And Rial kind of going in the opposite direction of just like the complete hopelessness, and like, we're not going to be able to do this anyway. We're like completely screwed. They're going to kick us out anyway. We might as well embrace it and like try to accept the fact that we are going to die and or be sent back home to die.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah. Just the interplay of their kind of dynamics. And I think Rial is just such an incredible character because she absolutely, like, her rejection of the sort of assimilationist thing kind of becomes a plot element almost, where she's like telling these like white immigration officers about the night witch that is haunting them. And like there's the great line at the end of the movie where she's like, oh yeah, no, like we were haunted by like a night witch, and it wanted my husband to die, but I killed it. And Matt Smith is just kind of like, all right.
it's such a cute scene, honestly, because I love that he's like, oh, it's like my son's not too bad. And Bull's just like, maybe I overreacted a little bit. And then he's just like, so did you guys still think you're being haunted by a witch? And it's just like, no, I killed it. And it's just like, all right, good. And like, it's just like the same way in which the bureaucracy works, where he's like, that's not a cause for concern for him at all. He's just like, well, that just means I can take that off your file. Good enough for me.
Yeah,
not going to investigate that. Not going to investigate that claim any further. As far as I'm concerned, that's like that just means I can take that off your file.
And it's just such an amazing scene too, because you see all of it from their perspective, and you can see how like Matt Smith's character would have every reason to just be like, to just fucking talk down to them about it, and to just be like, what are you talking? Oh, fucking witch, you fucking crazy people. Oh, go back to your fucking country or whatever. But like, what they are saying, not only is it true in the narrative of the film, but it's like it's more descriptive of like what they're going through, just from a kind of like metaphorical, spiritual perspective, and it's just, I don't know, it really forces the viewer to be like, yeah, no, fucking, she killed the fucking witch.
I also really enjoy, because you had mentioned the teens that fuck with her earlier in the film. They're the ones who like literally specifically have the line where they straight up tell her to go back to Africa, and there's like a specific casting detail in the interactions where there are three black teens, and it works so it's like it's obvious that she sees them and she's like, oh, I feel more comfortable approaching them because we are alike, so they will understand it. And it's like the film just being like, no, xenophobia is like way more complex, like is much more complex than the way it feels. Where it's like these teens are like born and raised, fully assimilated Brits, so they are also going to be racist and xenophobic to you.
Yeah. Because
like that is how xenophobia works. Is that is like they view themselves as the in group and they view you as the out group, and like even in a situation where you feel safe, like that can crop up.
Yeah, the sort of assimilationist kind of perspective, creating this like constant ladder of like in group out group shit, is just fucking universal, dude. Which sucks. But yeah, no, that's a very real scene. Where it's just kind of like the whole country that they've moved to is against them. Yeah. The other way that I feel like this movie kind of hits its mark is just in this is going to sound really weird and crazy, but the movie hits its mark really well by just being really good. And what I specifically mean by that is that the set pieces are all extremely well realized. The pacing is like the pacing is practically perfect from my perspective. And all of the images are just like really beautiful and powerful and artful and like just fucking cool.
And like unsettling. Like the visual design for like the scare scenes are like incredible.
Yeah, the movie, it does an incredible job of kind of straddling the line, because it almost becomes too much, because there are so many scenes in this movie that are so CGI dependent. And like there's like dead bodies rising out of the ocean. But the thing about it is like they got the right people to do those scenes. Like they did a good job about it is kind of the thing. So it fucking works. Somehow miraculously it works.
The shot of their daughter like rising out of the ocean after Bull is like, images can't hurt me, like do your worst, and it's her, and she opens her mouth and like sea life, like tentacles and stuff are just pouring out while he's screaming. Yeah, is like such a good visual horror scene. Like that is like that scene is like burned in my brain because it's like perfectly paced, the way it cuts to like his reaction just before it starts, and then right after it cuts to it like kind of in the middle of basically some sort of like tentacled monster coming out of her mouth is like, oh, the movie works because it is just a well constructed horror film. Like it is focusing on being a horror film that uses like all these metaphors and this imagery and this like political commentary to enhance it, rather than like, oh well, good horror is when it's a metaphor.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that's the other thing about this movie. Fucking scary.
Yeah.
When is the last time you watched a scary horror movie? I don't even know if, I mean, like, maybe Hereditary. Hereditary had some really, really, really scary shit in it. I don't know. Maybe that's the last time I was scared by a movie, but like, this one scared me. Like, there's a lot of just freaky fucking moments in it. There's the like apple or the orange or whatever that rolls into the crack in the wall, and you're just hearing all this whispering, and the camera just pans up to Rial's like horrified face.
Oh, so good. Or the scene when Bull like first discovers like the weird hole in the wall and he's pulling. Just the setup of it, of the wallpaper, like a single strip of wallpaper peeling, but then peeling like peeling in the way where it's like, oh, the wallpaper's coming down, but then it just completely descends off the wall in like such an unnatural way.
Yeah.
Like, that's great. And then the rope he's pulling out of it that's just going on for like way too long has this like visceral, like almost like he's pulling veins out of something. Like, oh, it's like there's so many just like great like visceral imagery that like plays both to the characters like traumas and also just kind of plays to like the sort of unconscious things that are unsettling to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just as many things like that as there are things that are just kind of like representative of this like ambient horror or kind of unease. Like, I don't know. I like, there's the scene later where Rial has this kind of flashback to, or actually it's not really a flashback, it's kind of more like a dream sequence where she's inside of this classroom, which the movie later reveals is like a classroom where all of these people were gunned down, and Rial like was the only one to escape out of all of these women.
Literally just because she was hiding like in like a cabinet.
Yeah. But there's just this ghostly sort of feeling to all the scenes where she's interacting with them. Because like one of the characters is kind of like talking to her, but you never see her mouth move. And it's just kind of, it kind of, this movie really like operates really well in the space between things that are scary and things that are fucking sad, which is a point made by all of the scenes of like the South Sudanese like civil war stuff. That is just like all of the sort of expositional scenes that are like, here's the trauma they have.
And this is similarly to like, when's the last time you saw a horror film that scared you? When was the last time you saw a film that had a twist or like a reveal that you actually did not see coming and that like actually like blew your fucking mind?
Yeah.
And this film has that. So this is where we're getting into the spoiler. In those scenes where it's revealed like sort of like what had gone down, like basically like everything that led up to their leave, when she's with those women in this sort of like dream sequence flashback moment, she asks where her daughter is, and they just respond, "Daughter." And then it's revealed that they don't have a daughter.
Yeah.
And that the young girl whom drowned when they were fleeing Sudan and ended up in the UK was not their daughter. It was a young girl that they essentially kidnapped to claim as their daughter so that they could get on the refugee bus.
Yeah.
And so it adds such a huge layer of like guilt to them, because it makes like so clear like why Bull is in such denial in the way he is, and why Rial is in such the denial that she is because it's not just, oh, our daughter died, we lost our daughter. It's, we kidnapped someone else's daughter. watched that woman scream. That woman probably was murdered because we took her daughter because she was alone.
Yeah.
And then we didn't even keep her safe. Like, we didn't even keep this woman's daughter safe. We lied to ourselves and made ourselves believe that we would raise this girl as our daughter, and we couldn't even keep her safe long enough to get out of the country.
Yeah, it's fucking heartbreaking.
It's like legitimately was like one of the few times I've seen a movie where like a scene like actually like pulled the carpet out. Cause like there's stuff that it's like when I was thinking back about it, there's stuff that kind of like plants that there's something going on with the daughter, but it very naturally just comes off like it's, you know, like it's trauma of having lost a daughter. And then to reveal that like this girl was not their daughter. They knew her for like maybe like a couple weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that they both feel such immense guilt for failing to protect her. And that is why they have the witch's curse on them, because the thing that they stole wasn't like something from their home country. It was that they stole another person and then that person died.
It's so much. It's an amazing twist. It's like it changes it utterly flips the movie on its head, and creates such a immense depth to it, and just the way that they did it through the sort of flashback of because you kind of like feel their relief when they are kind of traveling through this like weird sort of is it real, isn't it real kind of dreamlike timeline, kind of dreamscape of like South Sudan, because they're kind of going through these like beautiful sunny villages and these very like sunny classrooms, and then for that to provide this like really strong backbone of the film and this really strong like context of trauma and of like difficulty and strife, is just an amazing way to go about it.
It also like really echoes the scene earlier when Riel is being asked like by a doctor who's essentially just like, you know, like giving her like her medical records, giving her a checkup, and the doctor is like, oh, like I like your necklace, and she's like, oh, it was Nyax, Nyax, I think is what the girl's name was.
Nyagak.
And they're like, oh, is that your daughter? We should have a checkup, and she doesn't really acknowledge it at first, and then she explains about how she has these two different like I don't know if it's called scarification, but essentially like markings, and she says that they represent the two tribes in her country that are currently at war, and that she had one when she was born. She was given one when she was born, and the other one she put on herself after her family was slaughtered. And she has this line about like, I survived by belonging to nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And then she says, she died, we lost her, that is why like that's why I didn't respond when you asked like, oh, we should bring her in for a checkup as well. And so it echoes that, where it's like she, you know, much as she had to like be survive by belonging to no tribe, she's trying to deal with the fact that she had to survive by essentially sacrificing someone else's daughter.
Yeah, she's, I mean, like it's this really tragic thing where she's kind of imparting her own worldview on this kind of unsuspecting girl. As much as Bull was definitely the kind of instigator in bringing Nyagak along, Riel has kind of like a similar worldview where, like, you know, sometimes you just have to uproot yourself from the things that you're from and from the things that are kind of important to your existence and your upbringing to fucking survive and to like make it another day in the world, you know?
Yeah, and I made a note, like, this is like very much so like it feels very within that spirit of like the House of Psychotic Women book, where it's like this idea of just like doing literally anything to survive because her brain is just in like pure survival mode. Especially like even in this scene with like the classroom full of these people whom she loves and cares about, like the revelation that she literally only survived by hiding in a cabinet that had enough room for one person, which meant that she had to watch these people she loves and care about get murdered so that she could live.
Yeah. It's fucked.
It's so fucked up, but it's such a great character psychiatry to give. And it does it so much like more effectively, and it gives you like so many of these like small moments that reveal how long she's had to like live this philosophy in order to survive, that I think is like makes it a lot, why it makes it so much more effective than in say like other films where those kinds of reveals are made, but it's revealed as like this is a thing they had to do like once. And that's not to like shit on that, because like, you know, that sort of survivor's guilt and trauma will fuck you up, but it makes for like a much more atypical presentation of that kind of protagonist, for it to essentially be revealed over and over that like she has essentially lived the past few years of her life making the worst possible sacrifices and like just mentally destructive like choices in order to continue living another day. And how that comes to the central conflict of like why she seems so willing to accept the Night Witch killing her husband is because to her it's like that is the only choice I have to like not die.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, so it's kind of interesting how you see a lot of kind of ghosts throughout the movie, which the movie kind of does this weird sort of double-tiered kind of reveal where like it slowly reveals like more and more ghosts, that they're kind of being haunted more than just by Nyagak, additionally by the ghosts of like the other people on the boat with them that drowned. So me and Jay were kind of talking before we recorded that like, oh yeah, no, doesn't the movie kind of reveal the monsters like really, really early? But then I realized that I had forgotten about the actual Night Witch, like at the end of the film, which was like the weird sort of bald, like monster thing that was like sticking its hand all the way into Bull's like wounds and stuff.
Another great visceral horror scene.
Oh yeah.
Oh
no, yeah, like getting like under his skin in a very, very like literal sense is just literally really gross.
Literally taking over his body by like climbing underneath him in the same way it's been living in the walls.
Yeah. Just taking complete control of him, which makes one perhaps think about what trauma can do to an individual. But I don't know, like the movie just has so many different things to reveal as it goes on. It's just really well paced, and the fact that I kind of mentally sanded over the like actual Night Witch as like part of the sort of like collective of other things that they're being haunted by, I think is kind of a compliment to it. Like I don't necessarily think that the design of the monster is like trying to be scary in and of itself as much as it's just trying to be kind of the mouthpiece for like for the sort of like where their trauma is kind of leading to, I guess.
I am curious if the like what the restrictions that they were put on them, like how common those restrictions are. Because like if I have this right, they were put on essentially an allowance of like $98 a week, which is like are bills included in that? Because like I get that the housing is free, but like what is that money like? What are they having to use that money like for besides, I assume, groceries? Because there's also a line where it's like, oh, you're not allowed to work for any extra money.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so weird to like not allow them to get jobs. Like that just seems weird to me.
Like I can kind of see if maybe it's like a weird thing where it's like, oh, well, it's like a series of rules that were developed to try to like keep exploitation low, but it feels like it just like I said, like it puts them in a position where it's like, okay, well, they can't work, they can't have people over, like what do you want them to do to assimilate if like the goal is to get them to like acclimate and assimilate in the UK? Because it's like you're kind of taking away like some of the main ways people meet people and are like introduced into society.
Oh my god. Yeah, like assimilate with what? An empty fucking room?
Yeah, like oh, hang out with your neighbors. It's like, oh, okay. We can't have, it's like, hey neighbors, we can't have you over.
Hang out with your weird neighbors who are constantly making weird looks at you from their fucking windows.
I also like the recurring bit of people just being like, their place is bigger than my place. And it's like, yeah, and it looks like shit. Like, what do you like?
Their place is bigger than your place, and also it is infested with roaches and
Ghosts.
Just ghosts.
I did like
the
payoff of the line where Mark is like, oh yeah, normally they'll have you in a place half this size with like twice as many, like with like a bunch of other people, but I guess you guys lucked out. And then at the end of the film, we see their house full, essentially, of the ghosts of everyone that they like basically brought with them as ghosts. Like, I thought that was like a really cool like setup payoff, like setup with a line, payoff with a visual kind of scene.
Yeah, absolutely. The ending felt really powerful to me. I mean, the director kind of explained it as kind of something that I said before, where it's basically like their first step towards healing, and you know, and dealing with the trauma and like accepting the trauma for sure.
Yeah, like essentially accepting, sort of like resolving their survivor's guilt of like, we're always going to be to some extent haunted by and living with the ghosts of like everyone we tried to come with who couldn't make it. And basically acknowledging that, like, there is no way to, like, turn back the clock and bring those people back to life. Even, like, the representation of, like, trauma creating these, like these controlling, obsessive ways that he treats his wife. Like, the film does such a good job of just, like, placing, like, why do people who've experienced unimaginable trauma, how do they usually react to that? Not very well.
Yup.
I'm doing all that within the context of a very good, very straightforward ghost story. Little ghost story.
Yeah. Just a fucking strong film. Very strong entry of the, cadre of recent horror movies. Probably one of my favorite horror movies possibly ever. Who, it's really fucking good. Please watch it if you've listened this far and haven't. Yeah, I'm
interested to see what else the director does too, because I think this is his like debut film. I was like looking him up and I couldn't find anything else he's done.
Yeah, I literally don't know.
Let me see if he's worked on anything before this. It says he directed some like shorts and like a mini series, but like one episode of that mini series.
I mean, probably damn good. Probably a damn good episode and a damn good short if he's able to just like hop onto, a kind of major like Netflix feature project for sure.
From what I was seeing, it looks like Netflix just picked up distribution. I don't know if they necessarily produced it. Because the film had debuted at Sundance at the start of the year, and Netflix just got it for distribution there. It's really weird that we're now at the point where it's like Netflix is like able to just go to festivals and buy movies for distribution.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a bit of a switch from how things used to be. But yeah, you are right. The production companies, there's a lot of production companies that were involved. Apparently the Weinstein Company would try to like sue Starchild, which is one of the production companies, due to some distribution agreement stuff, but I think that they backed out of that. So now the Weinstein name is nowhere near this film.
And thank God.
We're all the better for it.
Oh man, I'm looking at some of his like stuff that he has on Vimeo. And I'm very excited to see what other horror films he makes, because he has a really good visual design. Let me send you this one. Maybe you can put it up on screen because it's only like 20 seconds long, but it's called Seaweed, and it's just a lo-fi video experimental short is what it's called, that he did like 10 years ago. And it's just really good. Like, oh, that's like a really good understanding of like unsettling imagery. He also has this little short called The Tickle Monster, and that just ends with a shot of like a really good monster design. This is I'm getting like very similar to like almost like Del Toro's like early horror vibes with like the way this guy understands like just good visual design. Remy Weeks, gonna keep my eye out for you, buddy.
Yeah. Your shit fucking rules, dude. This movie rules. It's so fucking good. Thank you all for joining us to gab about his house.
What if it was called Her House and it was for the ladies?
Yeah. His house in the middle of the street. What's that from? They should have had that song in the movie. They kind of fucked up. I don't know. It seems kind of fucked up.
Well, they're in Britain. Licensing is weird there. We got a Patreon. You want to support us on Patreon?
We got a fucking Patreon.
We got a Discord. Patrons get a exclusive Discord channel that they can hang out in. And for the $5 tier, they also get an exclusive episode every month where we talk about an older film that they vote on.
Mm-hmm. This month we talked about The Virgin Suicides, the Sofia Coppola debut film. And next month we're going to be leaving it up to our patrons to vote on a time travel movie that we're going to check out and talk about. Yeah. It'll be fun.
And if you don't want to,
little movie book club.
If you don't want to support us on Patreon, which reasonable, it is very not a great time for money. You can also join us, like I said, on Discord.
Yeah, come hang out. Come hang out.
Come hang out. Come chat. Come shoot the shit.
Yeah, we're gonna be checking out more movies, doing more stuff. Having lots of fun time laughs, good time, fun, and movies. And I like movies, and movies are fun.
Movies are pretty great.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
I am Barroo.
I am Jae Bear Hat. Currently banned from Twitter, but we'll see. Maybe by the time this is up, I'll be back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, hopefully by the time you hear this, it'll be resolved. But we will try to unsilence Jae Bear Hat. But yeah, thank you for joining. Thank you for his house. Yay. Bye.
Bye.